here. Make sure that we're running and up and ready to roll, which it appears that we are. And I think that we are up and rolling. Perfect. InStream is now working. So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me for this Tropics update on August 26, 2021. We've got a lot to cover this evening with regards to the tropics involving now Tropical Storm Ida. This evening, the system was upgraded to a tropical storm. Max sustained winds are still in the lower tropical storm range at 40 miles per hour, but the system is expected to intensify, and unfortunately, the system looks to bring significant impacts to parts of the Gulf Coast as we head towards this weekend and into early next week. I'm going to take my time this evening and kind of go through an extended breakdown. I'm also live on Instagram Live, and I just shared the link to Facebook as well. So here's a look at the satellite imagery this evening, and I'm checking on my phone to make sure that folks on Instagram Live as well can see the current information. Here's a look at our satellite, and I want to make sure that the live stream is up and rolling on YouTube, but it appears that it is. All right, cool. So we're up and rolling, and everything seems to be rolling well. Make sure you give me a thumbs up in the live video and comment so I can get back to some of your comments once the live video is up and over with. So we're going to take the next 10 to 15 minutes or so and break down the latest information. Some new info just came in from the National Hurricane Center. Their intermediate advisory, the 8 p.m. advisory, has been issued. And some takeaway points this evening. If you look at the visible satellite animation, of course, the sun is now setting over the Western Caribbean. There's definitely been some improvement in the structure of our tropical storm over the past 24 hours. What do I mean by that? How do we know that the structure has improved? Well, yesterday, it was very difficult to pick out a well-defined center. We were seeing wind shear kind of ripping into the west-southwest side of this system. But this evening, what I want you to kind of look at as a whole is the structure of this. This doesn't look all that impressive just yet in terms of big thunderstorms or organized center or any eye-like feature or anything like that. It's still got some work to do before we see that type of organization, but it's well on its way to finding much more favorable upper-level conditions that are going to be suitable for this to intensify. How do we know that? Looking at the imagery this evening, do you see this fanning motion of the upper-level cirrus clouds in the atmosphere? Do y'all see that? Kind of almost in all four quadrants of our system. If we were to cut it like this into four pieces of pie, you see that kind of fanning out of the cloud deck. What that tells me is that the environment above our system, in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, it's starting to show less wind shear and what we call radial outflow, where those clouds expand in all radiuses or all quadrants of the system. And that means that the system is starting to breathe. It's starting to operate more like a well-run engine rather than kind of chugging along with low gas mileage, right? It was dealing with dry air and wind shear, and now it's not really dealing with much wind shear. It's still dealing with a little bit out of the west-southwest, but I think with time that wind shear is going to weaken. All right, let me show you our wind shear analysis map. I always love showing this for folks that are kind of not attuned to what we talk about with regards to wind shear, right? This map, if you look at it, over the Gulf of Mexico, which I'll highlight here in pink for you. Here's the Gulf of Mexico, and you can hear some thunder in the distance here in New Orleans this evening. Let's go click this back on. Here's the Gulf of Mexico right here. There's Louisiana, South Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Peninsula. Within the Gulf, you see all of these green squiggly lines in through here? This analysis map is showcasing the wind shear favorability for an intensifying system. When you see green, green means go. That means wind shear is low or wind shear is light in the Gulf of Mexico, generally between 5 to 15 knots. And with water temperatures in the mid to the upper 80s, some spots near Louisiana's coast, near 90 degrees. That is very, very warm water. And also, the system is going to be passing over the loop current in the Gulf of Mexico. All of those signals to me point towards the fact that we're likely going to have an intensifying hurricane, if not a major hurricane, that could be in the northern Gulf in just about 72 hours to 96 hours from now. So the window to prepare is not all that large, right? We're not talking about a tropical system that is rolling off the coast of Africa and we've got 2 weeks to watch it. This is a much closer range, homegrown development that is going to speed up the preparation process, right? Your preparation days are Friday, Saturday, because Saturday night and into Sunday morning, impacts are going to start to approach parts of the North Gulf Coast line. And here's the latest track. This is the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. This is the 5 p.m. advisory. They did issue an intermediate advisory, and within that advisory, they mentioned that watches for the northern Gulf Coast, likely a large swath from more than likely close towards Mobile and Pensacola through Pascagoula, Biloxi, all the way through Louisiana's coastline, we're likely going to see hurricane watches issued either late tonight or early tomorrow morning. Those watches are issued 48 hours in advance of hurricane or tropical storm conditions being possible along the coast. Why is that? Once you have tropical storm conditions, 40 miles per hour or greater, then your preparation time is over, right? You start to get those inclement situations or inclement weather moving in, increased squalls, etc., and that leads to the preparation time being over with. So that's why they issue watches, and we're likely going to see hurricane watches and storm surge watches issued for a large portion of the northern Gulf coastline as we head towards the overnight, if not overnight, early tomorrow morning. Now, some takeaways from this latest track. Before you look at that center line, right? Everyone on Instagram Live and YouTube Live right now is focused on that center line. And that's important, right? I don't want to stray away from that. Yes, the center line is important. But when you're talking about the potential, officially the National Hurricane Center has this making landfall with 110 mile per hour winds on Sunday at 1 p.m. Sunday at 1 p.m. right off the coast of Houma, Dulac, Cocodrie, Berg, and south of Golden Meadow. They have a landfalling Category 2, borderline Category 3 system. It's a tropical storm right now. That means they are expecting rapid intensification over the loop current and that loop eddy in the Gulf of Mexico between Friday night and Sunday morning with a landfall sometime on Sunday. Still some variables there in terms of exactly when this is going to make landfall. But again, let's kind of focus in on this. Today's Thursday, and when I look at this, something that I always like to remind folks is that, again, we still have about 2.5 days out. And that means that the uncertainty here is still present. There are still indications that we could see some wiggle room, east or west, with this forecast track. That's why we have a forecast cone. In fact, the average error 2.5 days out from a system making landfall is about 150 miles. And that could be in either direction, right? So again, we could have a system come further west, or we could have a system come further east. That's why I say with wherever you are within this cone, you need to make sure that you are prepared. And everything that I've said so far this evening should be informational, factual. This is not something that I'm saying to alarm you. It's simply something that is presently known. We know the forecast models indicate a ripe environment for intensification, and because of that, because of the short window of time, you've got to start preparing sooner rather than later before time runs up and we have a hurricane knocking at our doorstep by the time we go to Saturday night and into the day on Sunday. Now, again, while we are looking at the center line, it's important to remember that impacts are going to extend along that center line and way east of where the center comes on shore. Really impressive storm surge. Again, very vulnerable part of our coastline from coastal parts of Florida and especially in coastal Mississippi and southeast Louisiana as we go towards those areas that could be impacted from storm surge, very vulnerable areas of the coastline. And Also areas that require advance notice for evacuations for our low-lying areas in parts of southeast Louisiana and into coastal Mississippi as well. So again, remember, you're focused on that center line, but remember that impacts could extend way away from that center of circulation. Now tonight, I want to show you something with regards to the latest GFS forecast model. So I'm going to go pull the latest data up. And before I do that, let's look at the intensity model guidance. This is our latest intensity model guidance, and this is kind of a suite of the model data. It's a summary, if you will, of our latest model data. And what you'll notice here is that very sharp uptick in intensity in about 24 hours to 72 hours from now. Notice that really sharp spike in intensity. The mean, if you will, or the average of these forecast models brings this up to a strong Category 1 or Category 2. Remember, the National Hurricane Center is already on the upper tier of this model guidance, indicating they believe that models may be underdoing the projected strength. I always say, prepare for a category above what is projected from the model guidance. And the National Hurricane Center is right on the money with that. They believe that the intensity could be higher than the model guidance. Could this be a Category 3 at landfall? No doubt. That's definitely in the cards. And we've seen this time and time again the past couple of hurricane seasons, unfortunately, that these systems can often overdo some of the intensity guidance. They can often kind of throw a wrench in the model data and get stronger than they are forecasted to be. That may or may not happen with this specific system, but the environment with low wind shear, a lot of moisture, and very warm water temperatures tells me, heads up, we could be dealing with an intense hurricane that isn't going to be moving as quick as, let's say, a Zeta from last year, right? A lot of folks in New Orleans say, we went through Zeta last year. Well, yeah, but Zeta was moving at near 30 miles per hour. It was zipping it in and out of here. This system, not nearly the case. This is going to be a more classic system that hangs around for much longer and brings heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and storm surge concerns for the area. So let's go talk about the model data tonight. This is the latest update from the GFS forecast models, and you can garner the information for yourselves. This is a pretty tight clustering of model data showing a significant impact of a landfalling hurricane for Louisiana. There is wiggle room. Could it get as far west as Lake Charles or as far east as Pascagoula and Biloxi? It's possible. There are still potential tracks within that, but you notice that focus, right? All of those point towards some sort of impacts, especially for southeast Louisiana and South Mississippi. Looking at the GFS and what is steering this system, I always like to show you the steering currents for these potential storms. And tonight, what we have to the north is a large ridge of high pressure. I talked about this on Facebook Live earlier. See this ridge extending over parts of the Carolinas? The past couple of days, that ridge had been trending weaker. Remember a couple of days ago, that track was supposed to be down south near Mexico? Didn't happen, because this ridge of high pressure with winds rotating clockwise around it was weaker than initially projected. And that resulted in a track that now points towards the central Gulf Coast rather than the western part of the Gulf of Mexico. So as we go towards Friday morning, this is going to be moving its way towards parts of western Cuba and very shortly thereafter into the Gulf of Mexico, where it's likely to find a haven of fairly ripe ingredients to intensify. By Saturday midday, this is a intensifying hurricane, and notice what's steering it. Here's our high, parked over parts of Georgia, South Carolina, and into the mid-Atlantic. But that ridge, see how it kind of noses out a little bit? As far south as Mississippi and Alabama, so our system can't go north, right? It's kind of bumping in to that ridge. It doesn't want to go into that blockage or that upper level block of high pressure. It wants to kind of ride around it, find that path of least resistance, if you will, and like a river stone in water, right? It kind of maneuvers around the bank, and that bank is right about here. So it can't go north into Florida or the Florida Panhandle, but rather it starts to slide its way towards the north to north-northwest with time. Now, the angle that it's coming in obviously is going to bring a significant storm surge concern for areas of southeast Louisiana over towards South Mississippi and into even Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. This area very susceptible to storm surge. The GFS forecast model brings this as a landfalling strong hurricane very close to essentially lower Jefferson and into lower Lafourche Parish. This is Sunday morning to midday on the GFS forecast model. The European model from earlier today will get another run of this later tonight, shortly after midnight, around 2 a.m. It shows a slightly more westerly track, kind of towards the Atchafalaya Basin with a landfall near Cocodrie before going in a second landfall possibly near Morgan City and eventually close towards Sippermore Point, because it has a slightly stronger ridge on the European model. So you get the idea. There are slight variations. We have the European that goes a little bit further towards the west, if you will, a little bit further west towards Morgan City, and the GFS forecast model, which is a little bit further towards the east with a landfall, drew that a little bit too close to Metro New Orleans, but still, again, you get the idea, a little bit right close to Grand Isle, and either one of these would paint significant impacts for southeast Louisiana. So with that in mind, again, we are still going to continue to monitor this. This is an evolving situation and something that has evolved somewhat rapidly over the past 48 hours. But the takeaway, again, is that you've still got 2 days, 2 full days, Friday and Saturday, to prepare. There will be some scattered storms, some locally heavy around both days, even without the presence of this storm. But again, it goes without saying that I always preach this: stay prepared, not scared. I went to the grocery store this morning, got all my essentials, and made sure I had my bottled water. I filled up my tank with gas, made sure I had some extra cash on hand. And again, we're a resilient state here in Louisiana, and we've been through this a lot recently. We know the drill. And I think that, again, it's better to be prepared and say, hey, I bought those hurricane snacks and I didn't even need them. I think it's better to be prepared if you're within southeast Louisiana, in New Orleans, and this is something that is concerning. I told my parents this morning, and I will fill y'all in with this because I'm always pretty open about this, and that I told my parents, I said, have that destination, that hurricane evacuation spot planned out today. You don't need to make the decision today, but if you are worried about it, and we do have the potential for a landfalling major hurricane and the possibility that there could be evacuations for areas in South Louisiana. Grand Isle already has a voluntary evacuation that's been issued, but there will likely be more if the current trajectory and current projections of strength verify and we have a category 2 or 3. You may have to make that decision of whether or not you decide to leave. And I told them today, not the day to make that official decision, but the day that you browse that location. You have that hurricane preparation plan that I always talk about in place and ready to roll. I think late tonight, early tomorrow morning, watches are going to be issued for parts of the northern Gulf Coast, and typically about 36 hours out from that, when you get the warnings issued, that's when more numerous evacuations become required. So with that in mind, use the time tonight, tomorrow, to pick up those loose items. If you've got the plywood and you're planning on boarding up the windows and such, get all that ready to go. Have those phone batteries charged, etc. And your phone battery packs. My tip of the trade, always have those phone battery packs that you can get the extra charge when the power, if it does go out. And stay tuned with the forecast. Have that trusted weather source, whether that's me, a local meteorologist that you've trusted for years, the National Hurricane Center, and the National Weather Service. Use those resources wisely and make sure that you're following for the most up-to-date, accurate information. With that, I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday evening. I'm going to have a whole lot more updates on both YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram coming up over the next couple of days, so make sure to stay tuned with the latest. and follow me on all social media platforms for that latest information. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will talk to you guys soon.